Good afternoon and welcome to Reading in an English Accent with Guru Nam. I picked up this little book at an adorable little bookshop about 15 minutes away from my house when I was printing out some resumes. I was waiting for the printer and I noticed a bookshop next door. And I popped them inside and walked around, and it was just full of old books. And there were these tiny ones for $5. This one has 3 essays by Emerson. What's his full name? Ralph Waldo Emerson, and they are entitled Self-Reliance, Love, and Friendship. And today I'm going to read a bit of love to you. I haven't read it yet, but I started reading the first paragraph and I love it so far. Haha, how ironic. And we are interrupted by the mailman. Excuse me. Thank you. Asshole. No, where was I? Right, love. Let us begin. Every soul is a celestial Venus to every other soul. The heart has its Sabbaths and Jubilees, in which the world appears as a hymeneal feast, and all natural sounds and the circle of the seasons are erotic odes and dances. Love is omnipresent in nature as motive and reward. Love is our highest word and the synonym of God. I do believe that is true. Every promise of the soul has innumerable fulfillments. Each of its joys ripens into a new want. Nature, uncontainable, flowing, forelooking in the first sentiment of kindness, anticipates already a benevolence which shall lose all particular regards in its general light. The introduction to this felicity is in a private and tender relation of one to one, which is the enchantment of human life, which, like a certain divine rage and enthusiasm, seizes on man at one period and works a revolution in his mind and body, unites him to his race, pledges him to the domestic and civic relations, carries him with new sympathy into nature, enhances the power of the senses, opens the imagination, adds to his character heroic and sacred attributes, establishes marriage, and gives permanence to human society. My God, is it just me or was that a fucking long sentence? Beautiful nonetheless. I continue. The natural association of the sentiment of love with the heyday of the blood seems to require that in order to portray it in vivid tints, which every youth and maid should confess to be true to their throbbing experience, one must not be too old. The delicious fancies of youth reject the least savour of a mature philosophy, as chilling with age and pedantry their purple bloom. And, therefore, I know I incur the imputation of unnecessary hardness and stoicism from those who compose the court and parliament of love, but from these formidable censors, I shall appeal to my seniors, for it is to be considered that this passion of which we speak, though it begin with the young, yet forsakes not the old, or rather suffers no one who is truly its servant to grow old, but makes the aged participators of it, not less than the tender maiden, though in a different and nobler sort. For it is a fire that, kindling its first embers in the narrow nook of a private bosom, caught from a wandering spark out of another private heart, glows and enlarges until it warms and beams upon multitudes of men and women. Upon the universal heart of all, and so lights up the whole world and all nature with its generous flames. This is so beautiful. I apologize if my English accent is horrendous, but I must practice it. Okay. It matters not, therefore, whether we attempt to describe the passion at 20, at 30, or at 80 years. He who paints it at the first period will lose some of its latter. He who paints it at the last, some of its earlier traits. Only it is to be hoped that by patience and the Muse's aid, we may attain to that inward view of the law, which shall describe a truth ever young, ever beautiful, so sensual, that it shall commend itself to the eye, at whatever angle beholden. And the first condition is, that we must leave a too close and lingering adherence to the actual, to facts, and study the sentiment as it appeared in hope and not in history. For each man sees his own life defaced and disfigured as the life of man is not to his imagination. Each man sees over his own experience a certain slime of error, while that of other men looks fair and ideal. So true. Let any man go back to those delicious relations which make the beauty of his life, which have given him sincerest instruction and nourishment, he will shrink and shrink. Alas! I know not why, but infinite compunctions embitter in mature life all the remembrances of budding sentiment, and cover every beloved name. Everything is beautiful, seen from the point of the intellect, or as truth. But all is sour if seen as experience. Details are always melancholy, the plan is seemly and noble. It is strange how painful is the actual world. This is so true. The painful kingdom of time and place. There dwells care and canker and fear. With thought, with the ideal, is immortal hilarity, the rose of joy. Round it all the muses sing, but with names and persons and the partial interests of today and yesterday is grief. The strong bent of nature is seen in the proportion which the topic of personal relations usurps in the conversation of society. What do we wish to know of any worthy person so much as how he has sped in the history of this sentiment? What books in the circulating libraries circulate? How we glow over these novels of passion when the story is told with any spark of truth and nature? And what fastens attention in the intercourse of life, like any passage betraying affection between two parties? Perhaps we never saw them before and never shall meet them again, but we see them exchange a glance or betray a deep emotion, and we are no longer strangers. We understand them and we take the warmest interest in the development of the romance. All mankind love a lover. Low power. All right. This is true. All mankind love a lover. The earliest demonstrations of complacency and kindness are nature's most winning pictures. It is the dawn of civility and grace in the coarse and rustic. The rude village boy teases the girls about the schoolhouse door, but today he comes running into the entry and meets one fair child arranging her satchel. He holds her books to help her, and instantly it seems to him as if she removed herself from him infinitely and was a sacred precinct. Among the throng of girls he runs rudely enough, but one alone distances him, and those two little neighbors that were so close just now have learned to respect each other's personality. Or who can avert his eyes from the engaging, half-artful, half-artless way of schoolgirls who go into the country shops to buy a skein of silk or a sheet of paper and talk half an hour about nothing with the broad-faced, good-natured shop boy? In the village, they are on a perfect equality which love delights in, and without any coquetry. The happy, affectionate nature of women flows out in this pretty gossip. The girls may have little beauty, yet plainly do they establish between them and the good boy the most agreeable, confiding relations, what with their fun and their earnest about Edgar and Jonas and Almira, and who was invited to the party and who danced at the dancing school, and when the singing school would begin, and other nothings concerning which the parties cooed. Don't completely understand everything he's saying, but I do enjoy reading it. By and by, that boy wants a wife, and very truly and heartily will he know where to find a sincere and sweet mate, without any risk, such as Milton deplores as incident to scholars and great men. I have been told that my philosophy is unsocial, and that in public discourses my reverence for the intellect makes me unjustly cold to the personal relations. But now I almost shrink at the resemblance of such disparaging words, for persons are love's world, and the coldest philosopher cannot recount the debt of the young soul, wandering here in nature to the power of love, without being tempted to unsay as treacherable to nature, aught derogatory to the social instincts. For though the celestial rapture falling out of heaven seizes only upon those of tender age, and although a beauty overpowering all analysis of comparison, and putting us quite beside ourselves, we can seldom see after 30 years, yet the remembrance of these visions outlasts all other remembrances, and as a wreath of flowers on the oldest boughs. But here is a strange fact. It may seem to many men, in revisiting their experience, that they have no fairer page in their life's book than the delicious memory of some passages wherein affection contrived to give a witchcraft, surpassing the deep attraction of its own truth to a parcel of accidental and trivial circumstances. In looking backward, they may find that several things which were not the charm have more reality to this groping memory than the charm itself, which embalms them. But be our experience in particulars what it may, no man ever forgot the visitations of that power to his heart and brain, which created all things new, which was the dawn in him of music, poetry, and art, which made the face of nature radiant with purple light, the morning and the night varied enchantments, when a single tone of one voice could make the heart beat, and the most trivial circumstance associated with one form is put in the amber of memory, when we became all eye when one was present, and all memory when one was gone, and when the youth becomes a watcher of windows, and studious of a glove, a veil, a ribbon, or the wheels of a carriage, when no place is too solitary, and none too silent for him who has richer company and sweeter conversation in his new thoughts than any old friends, though best and purest, can give him. For the figures, the motions, the words of the beloved object are not like other images written in water, but, as Plutarch said, enameled in fire, and make the study of midnight. Thou art not gone, being gone where'er thou art. Thou leavest in him thy watchful eye, in him thy loving heart. In the noon and the afternoon of life we still throb at the recollection of days when happiness was not happy enough, but must be drugged with the relish of pain and fear. For he touched the secret of the matter who said of love, all other pleasures are not worth its pains. And when the day was not long enough, but the night too must be consumed in keen recollections, when the head boiled all night in the pillow with the generous deed it resolved on, when the moonlight was a pleasing fever, and the stars were letters, and the flowers ciphers, and the air was coined into song, when all businesses seemed an impertinence, and all the men and women running to and fro in the streets mere pictures, the passion remakes the world for the youth. It makes all things alive and significant. Nature grows conscious. Every bird on the bough of the trees sings now to his heart and soul. Almost the notes are articulate. The clouds have faces and he looks on them. The trees of the forest, the waving grass, and the peeping flowers have grown intellect, and almost he fears to trust them with the secret which they seem to invite. Yet nature soothes and sympathizes. In the green solitude he finds a dearer home than with men. Fountain heads and pathless groves, places which pale passion loves. Moonlight walks when all the fowls are safely housed, save bats and owls. A midnight bell, a passing groan, these are the sounds we feed upon. Behold there in the wood the fine madman. He is a palace of sweet sounds and sights. He dilates. He is twice a man. He walks with arms akimbo. He soliloquies. He accosts the grass and the trees. He feels the blood of the violet, the clover, and the lily in his veins, and he talks with the brook that wets his foot. The causes that have sharpened his perception of natural beauty have made him love music and verse. It is a fact often observed that men have written good verses under the inspiration of passion, who cannot write well under any other circumstance. The like force has the passion over all his nature. It expands the sentiment, it makes the clown gentle, and it gives the coward heart. Into the most pitiful and abject it will infuse a heart and courage to defy the world, so only it have the countenance of the beloved object. In giving him to another, it still more gives him to himself. He is a new man with new perceptions, new and keener purposes, and a religious solemnity of character and aims. He does no longer appertain to his family and society. He is somewhat. He is a person. He is a soul. My God, I have been reading for 20 minutes. I think I will stop there. That was only 6 pages. There's much more. Perhaps I will read to you again sometime. do quite love this book. I guess it, well, his words speak to me, and it reminds me of a different time in life when I think, well, things were a bit more simple and easier. More clear. Life can be very complicated these days with all the choices that we have. It can be a bit overwhelming, in my opinion. So I like to read things like this. It reminds me that life doesn't have to be so complicated. And my God, I think he describes love quite well. All right, that has been reading in an English accent, perhaps a horrible one, with me. Thanks for listening. If you're still listening, I imagine that you're probably not. So yes, I can just say whatever I want at this point because nobody's going to be listening to this 20 minutes in. My God, they would be insane. That is the end. Off you go.